age of man has ended.
Welcome to the town of Arcadia. Though it might seem to just be your average unassuming town, you wouldn't believe that a literal war for humanity is being fought here. But you should, because it is. But which of the characters here are truly selfless and brave, and which ones want to snuff out humanity for good? I'm Keefy with Wicked Binge, and this is Trollhunters, Good to Evil.
You got me my helmet, Nana.
As usual, we'll be starting with our most noble characters and working our way down to the most evil. These characters are the good. Taking a slash at and getting our gold medal of good, we have the main hero of the show, Jim Lake. Despite being a high school student at the start of the show, Jim proves himself to be an incredibly intelligent and capable young man, even becoming a troll hunter, as he is basically the caretaker of his home and helps out his mother Barbara quite a bit. After discovering the Amulet of Daylight, Jim not only becomes the first human troll hunter, but the weight of stopping Gunmar and his forces falls pretty heavily on his shoulders.
You dream this?
And while some others would buckle under the responsibility or simply run away, willing to do some pretty dangerous tasks such as traveling into the Darklands to save the kidnapped human children and protecting both Arcadia and Troll Market from Gunmar and his army, Jim's got it covered. In addition to being a brave and intelligent person, he deeply cares for those close to him, having a father-son relationship with Blinky, as well as having a brother-like friendship with Toby, and caring deeply for his girlfriend, Claire. The silver medal of good has to go to Blinky. While Blinky's not the first troll that Jim encounters, he's undoubtedly one of the kindest, not to mention the wisest. When Jim is still finding his feet in the new city of Troll Market and the vast world under the Earth's crust, Blinky's the troll that not only takes Jim under his wing, but also helps out other humans as well, most notably Toby and Claire. Thanks to his pretty extensive knowledge of troll history, Blinky often is the brains behind the tasks and adventures that the gang tackles and helps them out quite a bit. Even though Blinky's not the best fighter on the battlefield, he does not shy away from dangerous tasks, such as helping his fellow citizens of Troll Market evacuate the city while it's under attack. Blinky does have a bit of trouble with certain characters, such as Strictlander and Dictatious, even after they both reform.
How do you like it?
Though, going by some of the actions that both have done to Blinky and those he cares about, it's a kind of understandable reaction to have. And summoning up our bronze medal of good, we have Claire Nunez. When the series first begins, Claire seems to just be your average high school student and classmate of both Jim and Toby. Once she becomes aware of the secret world literally under her feet, however, she joins the other heroes in the fight against Gunmar and the other villains. Claire deeply cares about not only her friends and the citizens of Troll Market, but also has a deep love for her family, especially her baby brother Enrique. Like with Blinky and Jim, when it comes to her enemies, Claire does not back down and is able to learn some pretty impressive shadow magic thanks to her staff in order to help her friends as well as just on the battlefield in general. True, Claire tends to get annoyed with some of the characters kind of easily earlier in the show, such as Toby and not Enrique, but that does not mean she cares about them any less and warms up to them over time, even considering not Enrique as a surrogate brother during the time he lives at her house. Honestly, seeing Claire, not to mention Jim and Toby, transform from your average high school students to warriors who don't back away from the weight of the tasks they tackle is an amazing journey to witness, and knowing how far Claire has come definitely helps on her being awarded a good medal. Just barely missing out on getting a good medal, we have Jim's best friend, Toby Domzalski. Enthusiastic, kind-hearted, and accepting are three pretty good words to sum up Toby as a character. While Jim is the first human to discover Troll Market and become part of its culture, Toby isn't too far behind, and while he is a bit overwhelmed by the excitement and mystery of the new world he finds himself in, Toby soon finds himself able to adjust to the situation and becomes Jim's right-hand man in a lot of their adventures. Sure, Toby might not be as great of a fighter as some of the other characters, but what he lacks in actual skills, he more than makes up for with his spirit. And while Jim and Toby are undoubtedly extremely close, Toby forms a second extremely strong relationship with Arg, allowing the big guy to crash at his place when he's not at Troll Market.
Dude, he eats VHSs.
But Toby has caused some issues for himself, as well as the team, such as showing some jealousy of Claire and Jim, as well as trying to ride the coattails of Jim's position, like trying to serve as a Duke of the Homecoming while trying to get Jim elected as king. Lumbering up to our next spot, we have the lovable Lug. Arg! Don't let the fact that his name sounds like someone screaming in pain fool you. Arg is unquestionably one of the kindest characters on the show. Prior to the events of the show, Arg did serve as a general of the Gum Gum army, and during that time was extremely brutal and violent, even being close friends with Gunmar, and like with other Gum Gums, he was raised to eat people. However, despite serving the main villain of the show for an unknown amount of time before the show, Arg eventually realizes how truly evil Gunmar is and defects from the Gum Gums, finding a new home in Troll Market, as well as a best friend in Blinky. And while Blinky might be his best best friend, Arg is shown to deeply care for pretty much all the residents of Troll Market, as well as forming an incredibly strong friendship with Toby, with the two regarding each other as wingmen.
Spy on you.
Now, while Arg is very much a gentle giant, one of the saddest facts about this lovable guy is that he has some pretty serious PTSD and is haunted by some of the actions he did while he worked for Gunmar, and constantly has to remind himself that he is now a pacifist. Arg is eventually able to come to terms with the things he's done in the past, which allows him to feel comfortable in lending his strength while going against Gunmar and his army. Coming into our next spot, we have Jim's mother, Barbara Lake. Right off the bat, it's clear that Jim and Barbara have a very loving mother and son relationship, even though it seems like Jim is taking care of Barbara instead of the other way around. But as Barbara does have a demanding career as a doctor at the Arcadia Oaks Hospital, we aren't faulting her too much. For a while, Barbara is actually pretty unaware of her son's heroic activities and basically just continues her usual parental duties. However, after Barbara does find out that Jim is in fact a troll hunter, after getting her initial overprotective reaction out of the way, still supports her son as well as the other heroes in any way she can. Barbara might not really help out in the fight against Gunmar, but she takes care of the changelings after they're rescued, as well as helping keep the residents of Arcadia Oaks safe after Gunmar and Morgana are able to usher in the Eternal Night. Advising us to give him our next spot, we have the Elder of Troll Market, Vendel. Blinky might have a deep understanding of the activities of Troll Market and the surrounding areas, but if there was someone who could probably take that crown away from him, it would be Vendel. As he is the oldest citizen of Troll Market, Vendel has seen his fair share of tough times, but he's always done his best to ensure that both his fellow trolls and other innocents are either safe or prepared for the dangers they will face or are currently facing. Even though Vendel is a bit wary at first of Jim being the first human troll hunter, this does not prevent him from advising Jim and the others. True, when it comes to the level of closeness that the others have, Vendel does not quite reach there, being a more pragmatic troll than anything else. Rolling up into our next spot, we have Droll. Before Jim took up the role of troll hunter, Droll was in line to take up that particular task and took the responsibility very seriously, feeling insulted when Jim became the troll hunter and looked down on him due to the fact that, well, he was a human and did not have any training to prepare him for the role.
So the Trollhunters training begins.
However, after Jim is able to beat Droll during a sparring match, Droll not only gains a deep respect for the new troll hunter, but becomes a brother in arms to him. As Droll was initially trained to become a troll hunter, it goes without saying that he's an incredibly brave and capable fighter, and even though he and Jim are incredibly close, Droll has been seen to care deeply for the other residents of Troll Market and will willingly put his life on the line for those he cares about. Coming in from the past, we have Merlin taking our next spot. Even though Merlin doesn't make an appearance in the show until the 3rd season, his influence is present throughout the magical world way before that, as he's the creator of the Amulet of Daylight, which functions to protect trolls and gives the troll hunter some really impressive armor and abilities. Once Jim, Blinky, and the other heroes are able to locate the tomb where Merlin has been sleeping for hundreds of years, he agrees to help the heroes with both training them for the war as well as fighting in it directly. However, Merlin also tends to be pretty critical and arrogant, as since he believes that he's incredibly powerful and wise, he knows what's best when it comes to the fight against Morgana and Gunmar.
Help me destroy Morgana.
Merlin does have his heart in the right place though, wanting to keep others safe. And with the final good character out of the way, we now descend into neutral territory. This is the gray area. Coming into our top spot of this section, we have our first changeling in our ranking, Walter Stickler, aka Stricklander. When he's first seen in the show, Walter just seems to be your average high school history teacher who does seem to care for the students in his class. However, like with all changelings, Walter's able to switch between his human and troll forms at will, and while this might be a neat party trick for some, Walter's using this power to help build the Kill-Ahead Bridge in order to save Gunmar from the Darklands.
Please don't hurt me. Calm down, it's me, Walter.
Just because he's aligned with Gunmar at first, however, really doesn't ensure that Walter is safe from even his own allies, as he soon becomes a target of Angor Rot. As he feels like there's nowhere else to turn, Walter eventually turns to Jim and crew for help, and while they're distrustful of the changeling at first, understandably, Walter does prove himself to truly have a change of heart. Like with Blinky and Droll, Walter helps Jim and the others prepare for the fight against Gunmar. In addition to helping with war preparations, Walter gets into a romantic relationship with Barbara over time and helps her in watching over the changeling babies. Walter does start off as a villain, true, but seeing him reform and grow to genuinely care for other heroes in the show is a nice thing to witness. Our smallest, trickiest changeling is coming up into our next spot, Not Enrique. Like Walter, Not Enrique uses his ability to alter his appearance at will to infiltrate the human world, this time disguising himself as Enrique, Claire's baby brother. After his true identity is discovered though, Not Enrique turns into a pretty demanding and manipulative troll, only really looking out for himself. And while Not Enrique does butt heads with the heroes of the show on several occasions, he eventually does does become an ally of sorts, even becoming close to Claire, with the two of them regarding each other as surrogate siblings. And rounding out this category, we have the deadly assassin, Angor Rot. So far, the characters we've covered in this section started out aligned with the villains, and over time reformed and helped out the heroes in some way. But with Angor Rot, the opposite is the case, as he was once a very caring individual for his fellow trolls and would do anything he could to protect them.
I need the power to protect my people.
But when he fails under Morgana's influence, Angor Rot's personality does a 180, becoming an extremely aggressive and violent assassin working for Gunmar. During the time he's under Morgana's influence, not only has Angor Rot killed several trolls in the past, but he also becomes one of Jim's deadliest enemies, as he's almost successful in killing the young troll hunter on a few occasions. What makes Angor Rot more dangerous when it comes to his encounters with Jim is that he has a vendetta due to one of their fights costing Angor Rot one of his eyes. During their final fight, however, Jim is finally able to get through to Angor Rot and reminds him of the troll he used to be. With his memories restored and realizing the damage both Morgana and Gunmar would cause, Angor Rot sacrifices himself as a way to help Jim and the others take down the villains for good. With the gray area wrapped up, we arrive at the dark side. These characters are the bad to evil. Stabbing us in the back in order to get our top spot in this section, we have Blinky's brother, Dictatius. Before the events of the show, Dictatius was pretty close to Blinky until the Battle of Killhead Bridge, where Dictatius, who had secretly decided to follow Gunmar's ideology of conquering the human world, was banished to the Darklands, although Blinky believed his brother had died in the battle. After he's freed from the Darklands, however, Dictatius continues the plans to overthrow the human world and is not afraid of getting his hands dirty, regularly antagonizing Blinky. However, Dictatius does eventually leave Gunmar's side, but unlike some other previous characters, this decision isn't made due to a change of heart, but merely out of self-preservation after learning that Queen Userna is planning on killing him. Once he defects, Dictatius does take up residence at the Lake household, but he also really doesn't lend any major help to the heroes either. Seeing how he values his own skin above anyone else's, his following Gunmar for centuries, and the fact that he doesn't really assist in taking Gunmar down, we feel like Dictatius is a good contender for the top spot of this section. The second in command of the Gum Gums is taking control to claim our next spot, Bular. While all members of the Gum Gums are more than happy to engage in fighting and bloodshed, few can contend with the straight-up viciousness that Bular presents, and as he is Gunmar's son, that is hardly surprising. Bular has killed numerous trolls over the years, regardless if they're his enemies or his allies, and only seems to be concerned with rescuing his father from the Darklands and ruling the human world. In addition to his violent ways, Bular is extremely arrogant, looking down on anyone who is not his father, and unfortunately for Bular, his arrogance is what leads to his downfall. Thanks to Jim being able to deactivate and activate his Troll Hunter armor at will, he's able to get the upper hand against Bular and destroy him with the Sword of Daylight once and for all. Tricking us and claiming our bronze medal of evil, we have Queen Userna. Remember what we said about Dictatius starting out as a supported brother to Blinky before deciding to follow Gunmar? Yeah, well, take that quality and ramp it up to the maximum level, and you have Queen Userna. While she's been working to bring Gunmar back from the Darklands for centuries, when Queen Userna is introduced in the show, she seems to be a benevolent, if somewhat distant, queen of the Krubera trolls. However, when Jim is on trial by the Troll Council for going into the Darklands, Queen Userna takes the opportunity to murder Vendel and sentences Jim to the Deep with the hopes that he'll be killed by the monsters that reside down there. After Jim's able to escape the Deep, however, Queen Userna's true colors are revealed, and she openly works with Gunmar and his forces to take control of the human world.
I give you Gunmar the Black!
If that isn't bad enough, it's revealed that centuries ago, Queen Userna willingly gave up baby Krubera trolls to Gunmar, including Arg, to grow up in that environment as well as become his soldiers. Others in this section have worked alongside Gunmar, but since Queen Userna not only follows his ideology but willingly offers innocent children for his cause, she's absolutely one of the most evil characters in the show. For the Silver Medal of Evil, we have the leader of the Gum Gum army, Gunmar. Despite not fully appearing until the second season, Gunmar's influence is present right from the word go. Like with other tyrants, Gunmar leads his army through fear and strength and is viewed by many in the show as the deadliest troll to have ever existed. And Gunmar definitely earns that reputation for a reason, as he's murdered countless trolls even before the show begins, and his ultimate goal is to have a mass genocide of people and, of course, taking over the world.
Or I will tread over your remains.
When he isn't directly committing acts of violence, Gunmar has been able to manipulate others into working for him, such as with Walter, as he believes changelings would have a better life under Gunmar's rule. And unlike some other villains, Gunmar's actually able to bring about his ultimate plan, the Eternal Night, even if it is just for a bit, which allows him and his army to cause quite an amount of damage to Arcadia Oaks before finally being stopped by the heroes of the show. Seeing the death and destruction that Gunmar's caused both in the past and his plans for the future, we're so relieved that he's destroyed by the Sword of Daylight, but his death does not prevent prevent Gunmar from getting our silver medal of evil, whispering into our ears from the past and convincing us to hand over the gold medal of evil. We have Morgana. She might be an unseen antagonist for a majority of the show, but that does not make Morgana any less dangerous. While Gunmar is the commander of his army, Morgana is actually the one who's pulling the strings, guiding him to free her so she can be set free from her prison and to the eternal night.
I will return.
Before Gunmar is able to free her, though, Morgana has a couple of alternative plans to be released into the world, as Claire's shadow staff is directly tied to Morgana, which allows the witch to possess Claire, as well as manipulate Angor Rot to nearly kill Jim after he's revived. Unfortunately for every decent troll and human, Gunmar is eventually able to free Morgana, which does allow both of their plans to kick off. However, in order to initiate the Eternal Night, Morgana carelessly murders several Gum-Gums in order to harness their energy for the spell, and while she does work with Gunmar and the other Gum-Gums, it's very clear that Morgana only sees them as pawns in order to help her gain power. Unlike Gunmar, though, she's not as bloodlusty, however her cunning makes her a much more dangerous threat. Plus, unlike Gunmar and most of the other villains, Morgana's not killed, instead just being imprisoned once again, leaving the figurative door open for further death and destruction caused by her.
The eternal night is here!
So yeah, since she's the mastermind behind a majority of evil, awful things that Jim and the other Trollhunters encounter, it shouldn't be a shock we're giving Morgana our gold medal of evil.